Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MA in Global Thought information session. My name is Sarah Miller-Davenport. I am the Graduate Program Director at the Committee on Global Thought, and I'll be moderating this session with my colleague Laura Neitzel, who is Vice Chair of the Committee on Global Thought, and two of our recent alumni, Nis Hamid and Lily Ullah. So I'll just very briefly introduce myself. So I run the MA program, and I myself am a historian of the US and the world post 1945. And I'm so excited to welcome everyone tonight. So I'm gonna ask Laura to introduce herself next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Laura Neitzel. I'm the Vice Chair of the Committee on Global Thought. I'm also Senior Fellow in Global Thought. I teach in the MA program and help advise MA essay projects. I am also a historian. In my case, I'm a historian of modern Japan post-1945. But in global context. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and I'll ask Lily to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lily Ullah, and I am an alumni of class of 2023, so just graduated in May. I'm originally from Manchester in the UK, and I'm currently living and working in New York in a strategic communications firm.
And Nis, do you want to introduce
Hi.
yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Hamid, and I'm also an alumni from 2023. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, but I'm originally Sudanese, and I am now working with the Global Shapers community in Brooklyn, which is part of the World Economic Forum's global community.
Great, thank you, everyone. So just to give everyone a sense who's listening in, this panel will focus on sort of big picture questions and to give you a sense of what the experience of being a global thought student is. Some of the more technical questions you might have about the application process, about some of the nuts and bolts of the degree, a lot of that can be answered on our website. We have an FAQs page. I believe our host Sophia can put that in the chat. So as we're asking our panelists questions, and you might have questions, please pose them in the Q&A box on Zoom. And again, this is your opportunity to ask us, and especially to ask our alumni, about what it's like to be a global thought student. So we will get that. I'll kick that off with our first question, which is, what originally drew you to CGT, and why did you choose this program over other MAs? So I will ask Nis to take a stab at that question first.
So my undergrad, my bachelor's was in global studies. So initially the name really caught my eye. And I was thinking it would be a more theoretical take on global studies. But the more I learned about the program, the more I was intrigued, especially the interdisciplinary nature of it. I was thinking of changing kind of my career path and my discipline in my studies, so it gave me an opportunity to explore other avenues in schools of thought. So that was really why I ended up choosing global thought.
Great, thank you. Lily, can you say something about how you ended up choosing global thought for your MA?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't planning on going straight to a master's. My undergrad was in Spanish and business, so kind of completely different and very much kind of there's one answer or there's not. And then I was writing an essay in my final year of my undergraduate degree in London, and came across a professor on the Global Thought program, and then through that came across Global Thought, and just was a bit like, oh, this looks really good, and now I might have to go straight into a master's. I think it just really, at a very basic level, it was conversations and themes that I was becoming increasingly interested in, but didn't feel like I had the tools or had dialogue to be able to kind of meaningfully participate in them. And it kind of, snowballed from there.
And do you guys see this as, I mean, I don't know if you were doing research into other MA programs at the time, but what's your sense of how a CGT degree is different from other master's degrees. So Lily, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to speak on this because I wasn't really looking at other master's programs. When I found Global Thought at Columbia, I started looking at similar programs at other universities, but they're just, I think it was the, as Nis mentioned before, interdisciplinary nature of CGT and the ability to kind of create your own curriculum based on your research interests that really was the reason that I chose CGT. So my focus was, in the end, individualism in the context of the climate crisis, but I was also able to take classes throughout the whole of Columbia, kind of with no restrictions, as well as doing the core CGT courses. And I think that's something that makes CGT a really unique course.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard this from other alumni, right? That they chose CGT in part because there just wasn't, there was no comparable master's program, right? So Nis, I don't know if you were looking at competing master's programs or other master's programs, and why you chose ours over others.
Yeah, I don't know if I should drop names, but I was I was looking at a master's in foreign service. I was looking at human rights studies as well. And ultimately, I think this was also informed by my undergrad. I chose CGT because I thought it would give me the most broad perspective in terms of also just diversity of perspectives. I find that, especially in American institutions, as an international student myself, who doesn't often share a lot of similar opinions as my political science professors, I did want kind of this diversity of thoughts and to be challenged and to like be in a cohort of people from all over the world as well. So that was really what endeared me to the CGT degree, and also gave me a way different experience, even though the names are really similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Laura, I don't know if you want to touch on that, about what makes CGT unique.
Well, I mean, I think that both of you said it perfectly. You hit the pieces, right? So the flexibility and openness of the curriculum. I think a lot of master's programs, especially like when you get into the professional schools or policy programs, they're really restricted. So you have to take a series of courses. There's very little opportunity to kind of customize the degree. And with our degree, half of the credits are in our core, because that's also important, that kind of foundation, and also that's kind of really where we build our cohort. But the other half of the curriculum is in electives that students often, though not exclusively, design around or choose around their MA essay topics. And so, there are no two global thought degrees that look alike as a result, because people take different groups of classes. And then I think the point that Nis made just about the cohort, your year we had 37 students from how many countries, Sarah? It was 20 something, right? 26 last year. This year we have 37 from 22 countries. And so there's no nationality that becomes a majority within the program. And so that diversity is very real. And it's not just about where you're from, but also people come in from different disciplinary trainings. They come in with different life experiences. Some have taken some time away from school. Others have come straight from undergrad. And so it's really, to me, that really marks us and makes us special.
Yeah, and I think it's the combination of all of those things together, and the cohort building is part of the learning that students undertake during their degree, right? I think we really encourage students to learn from each other in the classroom, outside the classroom, and there's, I think the intensity of the program and just the way it's structured really encourages a kind of strong cohort bonding that just having observed it both from current students, but also just seeing how our alumni interact with each other and with current students, right? I think there's it's a real community, you know, and that's really key to the experience and key to you know how students learn over the course of their degree. And you know, would also just emphasize you know, the half of the credits that you would take as part of the MA in Global Thought are electives from across the graduate schools, but half are in the core, right? And I think, you know, it's something about that combination of having that kind of grounding in the core, and at the same time, you know, being able to explore your own interests that does make the degree unique. Because I've also heard of other graduate programs where it's like totally open, you know, and you know, I think we strike a really nice balance. So one question that, you know, I know comes up a lot, you know, when I'm talking to prospective students is about how we connect with students beyond the classroom, you know, what kind of programming or, you know, sort of extracurricular activities we provide. So Laura, I don't know if you want to speak to that a bit in terms of, you know, what, you know, yes, you'll be spending a lot of time in the classroom as a CGT student, but you know, there's so many opportunities beyond the classroom that Global Thought provides. So if you could speak to that, that would be great.
Well, I think there's one whole set that's related to just us becoming a cohort and becoming a group. And so we have a great orientation. We have a great welcome to New York party at the beginning of the fall semester. We get together for pizza every now and then. We'll do kind of think-ins around the issues as they might pop up in the world. So we'll have a holiday party, you know, all those kinds of things that are just about us kind of building our own community. We've been doing a series of Friday workshops, which I think Sarah and I will talk about a little bit later, with students that are, you know, outside of class. But then there are also just all of the opportunities that we try to make students aware of that are happening in the city and on the campus too, which are innumerable, right? And so there's so much going on beyond the campus. And the other thing that we do is we really encourage students to take advantage of those things. So especially if you have 1 year in New York City, we don't want you to spend the whole year in the library. And so we want you to get out, and, you know, the city is also your classroom, and it has all these opportunities to learn, whether in museums or other places. And so we, through that encouragement and through also, you know, not suggesting that you need to be chained to your desk the whole time, even though it is a very rigorous, intense program. But it's really important to get out and learn in the city, learn other places on the campus as well.
Yeah, I'm teaching an elective this semester on Global New York, and we're going to the Museum of the City of New York on Monday to see their exhibit that's celebrating their 100th anniversary, and we're meeting with the chief curator after viewing the exhibit. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that we do a lot of at CGT, you know, and also encouraging students and pointing students toward events beyond Columbia, beyond CGT. But, you know, CGT also just has an extensive events calendar every year. So there's, you know, you can do something every night of the week if you wanted to. And we also, you know, I'll just also point out one of our electives in the spring is based around attending events and writing about them. And, you know, there's a range of credits that you can take that class for. So again, it's a way for students, you know, to take advantage of their time at Columbia in New York City. I don't know.
Last year we went to the United Nations. I mean,
Yes,
there's, and every year's a little bit different, you know, it
Yeah.
just kind of, we seize the opportunities as they arise.
Yeah, I don't know if Lily and Nis, if you have any favorite events that you attended last year while you were students.
I
did really
absolutely loved, oh, sorry, Nis. I
go ahead.
don't know if this counts as an event we went to, but I had such a good time at the Christmas/holiday party. I thought it was so fun, and it was like 3 months in, so everyone knew each other a bit better, but you weren't sad about the course finishing yet, and I just thought it was really nice. I can definitely speak to that. There were events throughout the whole year. I think that was something I really wasn't expecting from a master's course, for it to be so hands-on in the outside of the classroom sense, and was such a kind of welcomed surprise, to be honest. And I think especially for international students, which I know a lot of the CGT course is, moving to a city like New York can be really overwhelming and a bit stressful at times. And I do feel like CGT was a nice kind of base point and kind of always a contact point for things to do or just support throughout New York. So yeah, I can definitely speak to that.
Yeah,
Miss,
I missed the party, unfortunately, but I did enjoy all the museum trips we took with our art and protest elective or core class. Those were amazing and really eye-opening. We also, yeah, the trip to the UN was really great. We also got opportunities to go to the youth forum at the UN as well.
Right.
So many core memories through CGT. But yeah, and I'm really grateful for them.
So, and one thing I also wanted to talk about is, you know, again, thinking beyond the classroom, is the kind of support that we provide our students, because I think that's also, you know, in all my years in higher education, something that really makes our program unique is the emphasis on, you know, making sure students are, you know, happy and thriving, and, you know, but taking advantage of their degree, and receiving the kind of support that they need for, you know, an intensive master's program. So Laura, if you could speak more to that.
Well, sure. I mean, we really put a lot of thought into this, and it's extremely important to us. And you know, one of the things I can say, we don't have a PhD in global thought. Sometimes people say, "Why don't you have a PhD in global thought? We want to keep going." But we don't have a PhD in global thought. So you are our students, and we support our students. So when students arrive and they're confronted with the very complicated process of registering for classes at Columbia University, just tell you, it's just the truth of it. It's complicated. We're there to hold your hand and to guide you through it. And so that, you know, anything, you know, just from the bureaucratic, the red tape and that kind of stuff that you confront in any kind of large place like Columbia University, we're there to help you navigate all of that. And then we're also right beside students as they're developing intellectually, and particularly as they're developing their MA essay projects. We really accomplished that through a series of assignments that begin early in the fall and take you straight through the spring. And you have close faculty guidance as you're working your way through, you know, what you want to research, the research phase, the writing phase, et cetera. And so those are two of the key ways. And then I think we're very responsive to students. And so I'll actually say NIS at the end of last year had said, you know, especially in the fall, we did a lot for students and with students in the spring on Fridays, some Friday sessions. And she said, we needed those in the fall because that's when we were just new and we needed that support and we were trying to get used to the city and it was very stressful. And we said, you know what, that's a great idea. And this fall, we have a whole series of Friday workshops on everything from adjusting to graduate school, adjusting to New York City, we're going to have a movie day in December, you know, so that we're also very responsive to students and try to support them in whatever ways that they need. And that's not the same every year either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sarah, what would you add? And I'd love to hear from Lily and Nis as well in terms of your experience. This is what we think we're doing, but we'd love to know if it feels like that's what we're doing.
I mean, you know, I think it, you know, the point is that we take a holistic approach to student support and to learning, and, you know, knowing that that mental health and wellness, you know, and you know, having opportunities to socialize, right, those are important too, right? It's not just about, you know, doing the reading and writing your essays, and, you know, that in order to have a, you know, an intellectually stimulating learning experience, right, you also need those other aspects of your life taken care of, and that, again, that it's all, you know, it's all wrapped up as part of the CGT experience. yeah, I don't know if our alumni want to comment on that.
Yeah, I would like to say I did feel very seen and heard. We were always asked like how we're doing and if there's anything that CGT can do to support us, and just knowing that we have people to talk to and who are very understanding and have done this countless times before was really, really encouraging, and just yeah, set us all at ease, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it speaks to, I think the benefit of having a small and tight-knit cohort is that you do feel like you can reach out to faculty members. And I think the events or so like the lunches or the pizza Fridays where we would write our MA essays, it was nice because it's never obligatory, but it's always there. And you know that if you do need some guidance on writing your essay today, if you want to talk to someone about it, if you want to have support or get feedback, you know it's always an option. And I think that is something that I really felt throughout my first year of living in New York. And I'm very grateful for that.
So I'm just going to take this moment to tell those of us in the audience that feel free to post any questions as they come up in the Q&A box. We have a few already, and we'll get to those in the last 10-15 minutes or so of the session. So next, I want to ask about what comes next after the MA in Global Thought. So could you tell us, Lillian Nis, how your degree has informed what has come next for you, what projects you're working on now, and how your degree in Global Thought has informed that work. So Lily, if you could go first.
Yeah, so I actually kind of by chance, and I ended up working somewhere that I found directly through the Global Thought program. So in April, I think it was last year, I went to one of the events that CGT had put on of it was like an advisory panel, I think it was called. And there was someone on that panel who I heard talk, and I thought what his company did and what he did was really interesting. It was a strategic communications advisory firm, but with a specific focus on international affairs and advisory on kind of the intersection between business and policy. And so I messaged him afterwards and we began talking. And then a long time after, maybe like 6 months down the line, I'm now working here. So that was a kind of direct line. But I think more generally, I think CGT just gave me an idea of what I wanted, what interested me, and what I wanted to spend my days doing. And I think coming from my undergrad, which was so different, I think it just kind of gently pointed me in the direction of themes and topics and yeah, things that interest me.
Nis, what about you?
I think everyone in my cohort knows how CGT kind of reshaped my I guess my dreams, my like career aspirations. And the first initiative I did on my own after CGT was directly inspired by my thesis. And it was to put on an exhibition at a gallery space in Dubai, where I'm at right now. And yeah, that was directly inspired by my thesis. And then moving on, I began doing volunteer work for Global Shapers community, which is an initiative by the World Economic Forum. And it's basically creating initiatives that address local, global, and regional issues. So exactly what CGT has prepared me for. And yeah, I owe most of it all to CGT. And actually one of our cohort members, Sunera, posted about it on our group chat. So that's how I even found out about the opportunity. So it runs deep.
Yeah, and it's amazing. We've counted at least 5 students from just last year's cohort who got jobs that are directly related to their MA essay research. So we have someone who wrote about sanctions, who's working for the EU in their sanctions division. We have someone who wrote about how to increase democratic participation in elections, who's working on that, also for an EU related think tank. We have someone who wrote about space policy, who's now working for a space policy think tank. So and it's so gratifying to see that, right? To see some, and in some cases, these were interests that people came to CGT with, but in other cases, these were interests that they, discovered while they were here, right? And it led directly to, to their current jobs, or, or post CGT projects. So,
and it wasn't just this year. We have many more from years past as well. So,
yeah. And we have, as Nis indicated, we have because we have such tight cohorts and we have such a wonderful alumni network, that it's there are many opportunities, to find jobs, right, or to make professional connections through CGT. So the next question, this is for everyone, but I'll throw it out to our alumni first. So the people watching this might be thinking more about their application right now rather than what they're going to be doing post degree. So what piece of advice would you give to prospective students about what to look for in a master's program? So Lily, if you want to go first on that.
I think my honest answer is that you have to look for a master's program that one, interests you, and two, you can kind of see how you can align it with an interest, a research interest that you've got. I know that master's programs are a financial commitment, and I think for that reason it's really, you have to really do your research, and you have to know that it's going to be, or be very confident that it's going to be something that will benefit you in the future. And for me, CGT did do that, but I know it is a big commitment. So I'd say do research, look at other institutions, and I think just know what you want to get out of it afterwards, and I think that will help you narrow down and pick between ones where maybe the courses look kind of similar.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I guess the only thing I would add to that is think about how the structure, if that resonates with you, because as we said before, the CGT program is a lot of diversity and a lot of electives. So you get a lot of independence and a lot of freedom, but it's also in a very condensed timeline. So if that's something that you see yourself thriving in, and you can see yourself even just adapting to, then I would definitely consider it. But if you know yourself and you know that that's not going to work for you, then maybe look for a program with like a longer timeline or a more streamlined process of courses. But yeah.
I would also say, I would add to that, reach out to people in the programs you're applying to. And one thing you'll certainly find with CGT is that we will respond if you reach out to us. And we're always very happy to talk to prospective students, and that's an indication of, again, the kind of experience you would have at CGT. Laura, what advice would you give to prospective students?
Well, I think I would just kind of build upon a little bit what Lily was talking about. I do think it's really important to have a sense of why you want to do a master's. Because then that's going to help you choose the right master's for you. And I think the answer could be listen, I don't know what I want to do next. I want to have a chance to figure that out. That's actually a reason. And I think our program is capacious enough to allow you to do that. But if you have a much clearer idea of, well, I want to go into this field or that field, that's a really good way to go into a program like ours, because then that becomes the logic for selecting those electives, for what you're going to do for an MA/SA, for how you're going to position yourself in the program. We always have a subset of students who apply to PhDs afterwards. And so, how do you strategically use this year at Columbia to pull the materials together that are going to make you a very competitive candidate, and meet the people who are going to write those letters of recommendation for you? Or if you are really thinking, I really want to work in a certain kind of policy field, could I use the MA/SA as an opportunity to meet some of those people in the organizations that interest me, so that to use the year very strategically in that way. And so therefore, I think going back to Lily's point, kind of really thinking about why am I doing this? And for me, a good answer to that question is not, I don't know what else to do. I'm graduating and I'm in a panic and I gotta, I better go back to school. That's, we always have some students like that, and it's great too. And by the end, they're really happy they did the program. But I think the program is much more meaningful if you go in with real clear, and our program or any MA program, with a real clear sense of why, what you're after. Whether it's that personal clarification for what's next in your life or some very kind of focused goal.
Yeah, we always have a mix of students who are, very clear on what they want to do, and they're working toward that goal. But other students who, it's not that they're not focused, but they've chosen this program because they see it as transformative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want to figure things out, right? Not, and in a very kind of thoughtful way.
Mm-hmm.
Something that, I'd also love for us to address is, since we have so many international students and, we have, I believe, international students in the audience tonight. And this is a question for Lily, but, Nis, also feel free to chime in, is, what in terms of comparing your experience in the UK to your experience at CGT in Columbia, what were some of the biggest differences that you found?
I think the biggest difference is the openness of being able to choose classes in any school. So I know CGT specifically within Columbia is very, very flexible, but I think the American system as a whole, and this idea of electives and core courses, that's not something I personally had at all in the UK. And it just made it so much more enjoyable, and it made you appreciate the core courses and the knowledge you got from those and the conversations you had within those classes, but then you could bring to classes that some of them directly related to your thesis or a job that you might want in the future, but some just because you find them interesting. And I think you can play around with your credits and maybe trial and error from the first semester to the second. That was for me what stood out the most. And I think a lot of people find that when they come from the UK to then study in the US.
Yeah, and I used to work in the UK. I worked in the UK for 5 years at the University of Sheffield, and I think the classroom experience itself might not be so different once you're in a seminar, but certainly, right, the idea that the kind of liberal arts approach that you'll experience in the US, and that that again a CGT MA degree, in comparison to a lot of other MA degrees, provides that kind of openness and choice that you aren't necessarily going to find in other education systems. Nis, I don't know if you have any comments on that, or sort of the differences perhaps between your undergraduate and graduate education.
No, I studied in the US for my undergrad, so it was, kind of a similar experience, but I think there's always going to be an adjustment to a master's versus an undergrad degree. There is a lot more freedom in master's. Most undergrad degrees will have a more structured, like, do this in your general education, your first 2 years, and then focus on your core classes in the next 2 years. So it was really interesting to just hit the ground running with my own schedule off the bat. Yeah.
Can either of you tell us about some of your favorite electives that you took while you were at CGT?
Yeah, I can. I'm now like blanking on what I took. So I did in the first semester, I did a climate justice class, which was amazing and ended up not being that related to my thesis, but it was very practical. Honestly, it wasn't very academic in the traditional sense. There were a lot of like field trips. We did a lot of work with local organizations in New York. We did stuff with the Red Hook Initiative, which was great. And it was just so different to anything I'd done before. And the professor was almost like the anti-professor and didn't kind of claim to be this very stick to your books, the opposite to a lot of other classes I did at Columbia. So they complemented each other really well. Also did a counter-terrorism class, which I think something actually that I've not said yet is, I think Columbia this year, I was confronted with more views that weren't my own in a really positive way. And I think classes, for example, like the counterterrorism class I did, I had the opportunity to kind of interact with people who came from really different backgrounds, really different ages, demographics, and we definitely didn't agree or align with our views on a lot of things, but actually that was really useful. And I think it's really important to engage in those conversations as you enter life and also the working world.
As for me, I did a couple that were really cool. I did a sustainable fashion course. Again, I was like trying to redirect my interest into more of the arts, coming from, international relations background. I did a gender and sexuality in the Middle East, which I did end up taking some of that into my thesis as well. And I did Afro Latin America and the Artistic Imagination. And that was another class where I got to really explore New York, especially the Latin New York. So we went to the Latin Heritage History Museum, I believe it was called, in Upper Harlem. And that was really a really cool experience. But yeah, awesome courses.
Yeah, a lot of electives at Columbia make really excellent use of the city, as a place to as a place to learn outside the classroom.
And there are a lot of kind of professors of practice, so in other words, you can find them if this is an approach to learning that you like, so that you can find people who are lawyers, activists of certain types, people who work at the United Nations, and then they'll come and offer a course at Columbia. So, and this year, I mean, gosh, you could be taking a class with Hillary Clinton this year, right? Hillary Clinton's at Columbia, although hard to get into her class. But there are just all these people who either temporarily or they live in New York because they work in New York and they're connected with Columbia. So there are all sorts of those kinds of opportunities to do those kinds of classes.
So just a reminder, we've already answered all the questions in the Q&A because a lot of them were a bit more sort of detail oriented. So please feel free. We have a few minutes left to type any questions in the Q&A. But I'm also just going to keep asking questions of our panelists. The kinds of questions that I know tend to come up for prospective students. So one question is, and I'll throw this to Laura, is about what we're looking for in our applicants.
Well, I think first of all, we're looking for applicants who really get what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking for applicants who really want to be kind of challenged to rethink the categories that they use for interpreting the world. And because we think that's absolutely necessary at a time of such change and global challenge, that maybe we need to rethink even the kinds of questions we're asking. And so, we want students who really understand what we're doing. We're looking for students who have a clear sense of why they want the program. And so whether it's a kind of broad set of questions that interest you or something, very narrowly focused that you're interested in researching, we want you to come in with a clear sense of why you're doing this. So we're looking for that. I'm just kind of thinking about what we're looking for when we're reading those application essays. We're looking for people who have demonstrated strong academic record. So as demonstrated through a transcript and demonstrated through a writing sample and through letters of recommendation, because we definitely want students who come to Columbia and feel comfortable with the rigor that they will encounter in classes here. So those are the things off the top of my head. What would you add, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sort of echoing some of what you've said, we want to get a sense of what kind of student you would be, and that, there are different ways to indicate that. You might say, like, here are the electives that I'm interested in, or here are the type of classes that I might want to take. And you're certainly not expected to have like a research proposal in your application, but some sense of what your essay might be about. And you're not wedded to that by any means. But we want to know that you're thinking about it, that you're thinking about the kind, because the MA essay is very central to the degree, we're looking for students who, are excited about ideas and, are excited to do an independent research project. So that's definitely something we're looking for as well. And yeah, strong writing sample, because again, the MA essay is so central.
I also just wanted to add, I would really recommend to everyone to reach out to people who've done the course. I think I spoke to like 3-4 people who were in the year above me, I guess, class of 2022, because I had questions over like what kind of writing sample, what people did on the course, whether it would be a good fit. I really, really recommend doing that, and it will kind of give more clarity on what you would actually be doing on CGT, but also the application.
Yeah, always good to talk to people and get more information. And you can see on our website, we have alumni profiles on our website. You can also, I don't know how you found people through LinkedIn maybe, but there are a lot of alumni out there. On the essay topic, I would love for our alumni to share what their essays were about. So Lily, you mentioned it briefly. It's about climate change and individualism, but if you could just perhaps summarize what you found through your year of research.
You put me on the spot, which I can't remember. So yes,
you can.
my essay was on individualism in the context of the climate crisis, and then I focused specifically on the UK, just because there is a word limit and that would be too much. And so I focused on the 3 kind of overarching themes of capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy, misogyny. I actually can't remember which one I settled on now, and looked at how all of those themes explored and intersected with the idea of individualism in the UK. I kind of had an idea that that's what I wanted to study or focus my thesis on. I'd read Naomi Klein's book throughout the summer before, but it did, I would say, maybe even up to like January, February. I know, Sarah, you were my advisor. It was constantly changing, and I would do a class where I'd read a book and then that would change my mind. And I think the nice thing about the constant check-in with faculty and your advisor is that there is that flexibility, and you definitely don't have to stress out if by October you've not found exactly what you want your research project to be. I think let your courses and electives kind of guide you along the way.
Yeah, I mean, the MA essay is not just yes, you end the year with a product that you're very proud of, but it's also, I mean, more important is the process that you go through to get there. So Nis, can you tell us about your essay?
Yeah, mine was called Thawra Thiyab, the transnational proliferation of Sudanese aesthetic imagery, or aesthetic symbolism, actually. And it was about feminine elements in Sudanese revolutionary art. And I didn't initially know I was going to do that topic. It actually took a really long time for me to land on that topic. And it's because I initially thought I had to do something in my comfort zone, which is international relations. So I was going to tackle gender in totalitarian regimes as a broad theme, but then I just would rather have done something I was interested in. And I think I got advice from one of our CGT professors, Ramona, said, "You're going to be working on this for 9 months. You better like what you're writing." So I just went with what I wanted to, what I was interested in and what I wanted to read about, which was art and how women are informed a lot of the revolutionary imagery that came out of Sudan. And that year especially was really profound because the fighting got really bad and the civil conflict escalated. So it was a really timely essay. And I think it was really important for myself and my connection to my own heritage to write my thesis. So it was a very healing process as well. So yeah.
Thank you. We have one question in the chat, which I'm just going to answer very quickly before we end, which is about the percentage of international applicants admitted to CGT. I don't have that statistic available, but most of our students are international every year, so that gives you a sense of how much we prioritize having a globally diverse cohort as represented by our wonderful alumni with us here tonight. So I just want to say thank you so much to Nis and Lily for being here, and to Laura, and to our audience. Yes, we're putting some information in the chat. So please sign up for our newsletter. It only goes, you'll be getting the newsletter once a month. It will give you updates on what's happening at CGT. There are numerous events that you can attend either in New York, or some of our events are also live streamed. So again, please stay in touch through those links that we're providing. And we'll also be following up with you after the session with an email that will give you an opportunity to have a one-on-one session with me if you have any follow-up questions. So again, thank you so much to our panelists and to our audience for being here tonight.